we're back in Olympia again asking about regionalization. The cost of living factor that's applied to school districts, for our representatives and senators to really look at this model, because it does not currently reflect where we're at with the San Juans. It's a great concept overall, but it does not apply well to the islands. So we're back asking again that they review this and make adjustments for that.
Let's back up one step. What is regionalization?
Well, regionalization was a beautiful concept in that it would honor the employees and where they live. So we could actually provide some more higher wages to staff who live in high cost of living areas. And it's a mathematical formula that was set for the entire state. But the problem is that the formula hasn't worked out the way it should. So, we're an archipelago that actually has a high cost of living as much as Seattle, and yet we're not getting the same percentage of regionalization. So it does impact what we can pay our teachers, and then it impacts our recruitment and our retainment.
One of the ways the formula works is that the state considers proximate districts as districts within 15 miles of each other. And in the formula, in the San Juan Islands, which is a unique area geographically in the state, they don't count the water. So the median home values the number that they're using to determine median home values of our districts and the proximate districts that are 15 miles include mainland districts that are quite distant from where we are. I think Orcas has got a couple examples of that.
So for Orcas Island, when we're moved over to the mainland and they draw that circle around us for 15 miles, we range from Bellingham to Port Townsend. And the district's included in that as well.
The idea that a teacher or a paraprofessional or staff member of any kind could live in Bellingham and commute on a daily basis to Orcas Island is the spirit of this. By including Bellingham in that calculation, the assumption is that you can live in Bellingham and commute on a daily basis to Orcas Island to work.
But in theory, you like regionalization, in theory.
Oh yeah, I would say in theory we would all agree that the idea behind it was solid. The implementation of it has been the problem.
And the fascinating thing is Shaw Island is a higher regionalization factor than the other three districts, so it doesn't make much sense to us why the island in the middle would be higher regionalization than the other three islands around Shaw.
Okay, so with that description of regionalization, now let's talk about what you're here asking for.
We're really here asking for San Juan, Lopez, and Orcas to be moved up to the 18% that Shaw Island is getting. That total amount to move us up for a year is $575,000.
For all three districts.
For all three.
Yeah.
For Orcas Island School District, that would be $169,000 per year that we could then turn around, provide to staff to help offset the cost of living on Orcas Island.
And without an adjustment like that, how do you make up this gap?
Well, just with about anything that we have, your general fund, which includes your local levies, has to make up the gap that is created by the state not providing enough funds, basic education funds.
It absolutely affects recruitment. It affects retention. It affects longevity in the position. We all have stories of staff who've accepted positions and then been unable to find housing in their price range, rental or to purchase. Cost of groceries, the ferry costs to go off island for any reason at all. All of those pieces, cost of living is high on the islands like it is in other places, but there are additional costs for island districts and island residents. Transportation's different. You got to line your travel with a ferry schedule and then pay that cost of the ferries and burn the gas to get to Anacortes or wherever you may be going. So it's not even just that things cost more on the island, houses, groceries, gas. It's also that to get off the island, you have to pay every time.
What kind of reaction are you getting from legislators?
Well, it's interesting. We've got a mixed. We have had some good reactions from a couple of people where what we really are asking for is that in a long-term fix, the entire state we would look at the entire process of regionalization and all the state would benefit. But in the short term, we're asking that they maybe put a budget amendment on the K-12 budget for this year just for our islands. Just move our formula, the result of a formula up to 18%. And we have a couple that have said that they are going to look into how to make that amendment happen. So that's good news. We've also had others that have said that if there's no new money to do this, so you would be asking us to take from someone else in order to give to you. So rob Peter to pay Paul. So it's a mixed, but we still feel good that at least we have a mixed reaction to this.
Any other reactions to the reactions that you're getting? Any other descriptions?
You know, I think that we've gotten a positive response to this. It's interesting to walk into a senator's office. They recognize this because we've been here before. They understand this. They really want to help us. They also talk about the challenges of that long-term plan of looking at regionalization as a state, the amount of time and effort it would take to do that. Yeah. They've talked about that fixed sum for regionalization. But the amount we're talking about really is an amount that we feel like is due to us because of our median home prices. And we really haven't had anybody be able to explain how we ended up with a 12% in this situation and how we can resolve it. You know, give us an appeal process. Give us somebody else to talk to where we can state our case, who can look at this and then make adjustments.
So in addition to the sense of inequity, the math is opaque. You can't figure out why one district, did you say 18?
18%.
And everybody else is 12?
Yes.
Yeah. And the 15-mile for Orcas to include Bellingham, for example, doesn't math, as they say. I do think that, you know, one of the things we were prepared to address was, I think at the state level, the suggestion that our districts might consolidate for efficiencies has come up. And this is also one of those great illustrators of how consolidation is near impossible. Even sharing staff between islands, finding people who are willing to travel and spend the time it takes to get from the mainland to an island or from one island to the other island.
So now that you brought that up, do you want to categorically state here for the audience that there will not be a consolidation of the 4 school districts in the islands? Is that a fair?
Categorically? We won't say that, but we will say.
We see no benefits. We see no efficiencies. We see no economic benefit. We actually see the student experience being impacted negatively by consolidation, not having people on the ground when things happen. Trying to share, you know, particular staff has been a failure. We continue to try. We use some remote staff, but we need. I think each district needs to have a leader on the ground, and that next level of leadership on the ground, and teaching students in person.
That suggestion, was that an outlier? That doesn't come up much, does it? The idea of, does it?
To us every year.
It's come out quite a bit.
But I think it comes out from you think from people who don't quite understand the geography. And we have, it's not just that we see no benefit. I don't think logistically it works. And Becky is a good example. We shared her special education direction services with Orcas last year. We did a collaborative, and it's just too much time on the boat and not enough time with boots on the ground. And that was a great point. It is the boots on the ground are what's important. If you consolidate within 15 miles of each other and you live on the mainland where you're not having to worry about the boats, it's possible. We could probably make arguments there that it wouldn't be beneficial either, but that would be from a different reason. But here, logistically, it's just I will never say impossible, but virtually impossible.
So they're just not thinking about the unique challenges and the unique qualities of little districts on little islands, way far away from everything else. At least Vashon is across the way, from King County, but you just look at a map. It just the things that work everywhere else don't work here. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
4 islands, 4 districts where we have that unique geography that makes it not work. And we are a long way from Olympia up there in the San Juans.
Do you guys, the 4 of you, it seems like you are in contact and in coordination on other things. Is this a close-knit group here?
It is a close-knit group. We meet weekly. We're fighting the same challenges, and as a team, we can find our way forward together.
Also, to be clear, I'm half-time on Lopez, so when viewers might think why are we paying for 4 full-time superintendents? We have fractional positions. This is not, we have 2 full-time superintendents on the larger islands, but the smaller islands like
I'm
Shaw.
super part-time on Shaw. I have another full-time job too.
So we are not, we're not, speaking of efficiencies, the districts aren't funding 4 full-time superintendents.
That's a good point.
So when you're down here looking for that $575,000, which is kind of like an accounting plug, I think accountants would call that a plug or a fix. Are you also lobbying in terms of just the big picture of education? The superintendent has warned close to the beginning of the session that he feels like there is the risk now again of another giant lawsuit, multi-billion-dollar lawsuit for generally underfunding education. Are you guys addressing that? Or are you really focused on this gap?
Regionalization is kind of a unique priority for the islands. As far as the state, we're very much lobbying for the big 3 as well. So for the big 3, that's special education, that's material, supplies, and other costs. You might think of that as non-personnel costs. And the final one is transportation. So we're lobbying for those as well. One of the things with material, supplies, and other costs, the non-personnel, in most of our budgets, we run about 83% for personnel cost and roughly 17% for non-personnel cost. Out of that, there's 10% that we really can't control. That's utilities, that's insurance rates, et cetera. So that leaves us with that 7% that we can control. And for us, we've gone through our budgets line item by line item, and we've already reduced those expenditures, and they're very small overall. The $21 we got per student last year for non-personnel costs, we gladly accepted. We needed those funds, but that didn't even offset the increase in our insurance for this last year. And inflation continues to increase.
You mentioned transportation, and this is not really unique to the funding problem that we're talking about, but in general, what's the number one thing in terms of transportation, marine transportation, that the schools need?
No, without a doubt, reduce the ferry cost.
Yes.
I mean, we have students that go off, 3 times a week at least to different activities. Yeah, which we all say we're pretty amazed that our students do so well, and they're leaving at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and they do the work on the boat. We have amazing students and amazing communities, but when you go even to La Conner to play a soccer game, you're getting back on with a bus and spending close to $300. So every time you travel, and that just adds up. And again, we have differences. In San Juan Island, we luckily have a park and rec levy that supports us, so it doesn't impact us as much as it may impact Orcas. At the same time, that still impacts our voters, because they're paying for that, and schools should be able to step onto the ferry without that.
So that's $300 every time we put our buses on the ferries. That it's hard, really, I think, for me to understand why we're still doing that.
Yeah.
And that's money that we're taking out of necessarily the classroom.
And if they don't make the return ferry, it's lodging for everybody.
Yeah.
The expenses multiply depending on some of the challenges that arise. For example, when Lopez Island and Orcas Island were in the city championships for boys varsity soccer, going down to Federal Way was, an additional postseason expense, and the state doesn't provide funding specific to athletics. And transportation's folded into that as well. So you're paying your drivers, you're paying lodging, you're paying the ferry fee, you're buying fuel. And so those expenses really, especially in a small district, that expense for us is the same as it is for a larger district, plus the ferry costs.
Who should pay that $300? State, WSF, county?
Actually, I mean, if they're going to fix the transportation issue, I mean, we're not funded for transportation even completely, even with our just daily routes. So I have a tendency to go back to this as a part of the state expense. But I understand that also feels like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul too, because the ferry needs to survive, and we understand that. But it is an expense. It just shows you how much more we have to pay in transportation, living in our unique situation compared to other places. Brady made a comment to one of the. It was a representative. Not actual representative, but someone that works for him, just said, what you have to see, it's apparently you play basketball or did when you were in high school, but when you went to a game, you got on your bus at 4 o'clock and drove 15 minutes and you were at a game. That doesn't happen with us, and the expense is different because of it.
Lastly, does the public get this? Is the public helping you? The citizens of the islands, are they helping? Have they helped with the lobbying effort?
We have a wonderful group who are multi-constituency. It's teachers unions, it's the classified unions, it's school boards, it's PTAs, and of course the four of us as superintendents. We've met 3 times just this season in preparation for this trip to Olympia and for all the advocacy work that they've been doing. There are town halls planned on islands. There's a website set up with all of this information available, and it's all volunteer work. And so I think on the islands it's well understood, and now our task is to help our colleagues in Olympia understand it.